days, I think I have seen more pipe and drape than perhaps I'm supposed to in a season, so I feel like I'm an honorary member of the trade show industry. Would it be okay if I just join along? Sure. Okay. But also in that same context, having seen a number of people who were at booth setup or people who were setting up registration tables, working registration tables, dealing with AV needs from a multitude of speakers, I've run across one or two difficult people in the last 48 hours. Do any of you have any difficult people in your world? One or two. Outstanding. If you brought them with you and or they're sitting next to you right about now, just all eyes in this direction will be okay. Would it be helpful to you if we were to help you make them disappear without having to go to jail? I always add that caveat. In fact, when I talked to my New York editor when the book first came out, I said, please, 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 let's make that the subtitle. She wouldn't go for it. If you look, though, at the concept of difficulty, sometimes it's subject to interpretation. What's difficult for you may not be difficult for you. Would you agree? And there are some people out there who are just difficult no matter who you are, right? So one of the first things I'd like us to look at in the context today of helping you make them disappear is what are they doing that makes them difficult? What exactly are they doing that makes them difficult? To do that, I would ask you turn to a neighbor, one that preferably is not your difficult person, and share what your experience is. Think of one or two people in your world that are difficult and share what they're doing. And then I'll ask you to shout out if you would. Ready, go. Excellent. If I may dive in for just a moment. Help me understand, what are they doing that makes them difficult? Give me some ideas. Gossip. They gossip. The nerve. What else do they do? They don't listen. Like at all. To anything. Did you know listening is a skill? Hearing is a gift. Many get the two confused. So they don't listen, they gossip. What else do they do that makes them difficult? They talk too much. They micromanage. Oh, isn't that fun? What else? Nuh-uh. They find something negative in everything. Like my mother. Like your mother. Maybe we should schedule something after session. There's a lot of negativity out there in the world. Would you agree? In fact, I originally went to school to be a broadcaster on CNN. That was my original dream. I have a degree in speech communication, which is unusual for speakers to actually have a degree in speaking, but it worked out well for me. I went to school to be on TV. And yet, what I've learned in the last 10 or 12 years is that watching TV is a fabulous way to perpetuate the negativity that we encounter every day. Do any of you watch the news? Well, we got several people that do. The news exists for a reason. People watch it. They've learned to appeal to the drama side of things. Now, here's what happens on the news. You're going to see all the great stories about people who have been shot, run over, dead, lost, they're on fire or something, right? You are not going to see the story about the wonderful little Girl Scout who sold a bazillion boxes of cookies and has taken her mom on the world tour, unless she's been hit by a bus. So a lot of what we encounter in our external environment could perpetuate difficulty, certainly negativity. Excellent. What else? What else makes them difficult? They can't make a decision at all. Do you need them to make a decision? Right now, we're going to work on who needs them and who doesn't need them to make a decision. Anything else? I'll take two more. What else makes them difficult? Excuse me? Double binding. Help me. Here's. I'm an advocate for change, but you'll be judged by the same old people. Got it. I'm an advocate for change, but don't change a thing. Got it. Excellent. So they backtrack a little bit on what they say. Super. What else? One last one. No. Do you work with any self-centered people? Okay, let me take it out of the context of your industry with all your colleagues in the room. Do any of you know any self-centered people, perhaps in your personal life or a previous career? One or two people. Here's what I've discovered about some self-centered attributes. Most of us live inside our head all day long. In fact, do any of you talk to yourself? We got like 4 people. All right, it's later in the afternoon. Let me try this again. Who in here talks to yourself? All right, if you did not just raise your hand, then you're inside your head going, I don't know, do I talk to myself? Work that all out. Because the reality is we can actually be one of the greatest difficulties or the greatest obstacles that is standing in our own way. So while this may put a real downer on the rest of the afternoon, we will also look at, gosh, are we the difficult people that need to adjust our own sort of MO or our own sort of behavior? Is that fair? Is that okay to do? Or should I reserve that for next week? That's okay? Now, if you would, on your handout, notate what's the greatest difficulty, either out of the list that we shared or that you're simply facing. Is it gossip? Is it self-centered people, negativity? Maybe they don't do what they say they're going to do. Maybe they complain all the time. Maybe they do the double binding, this new term for me today as well. Maybe they don't listen. Maybe they lie. Maybe they're manipulative. Maybe they're neighbors with his mother and they all talk and gossip about you. I don't know. What is it that's your greatest difficulty in the yellow box? And then I have to bring us to a very important question. Do you know people who complain because their ice cream is just too cold? Do you work with people, encounter customers, colleagues, anyone, that you find every time you talk to them and you say brilliant things like, how are you? The rest of the conversation is all about all the things that are going wrong in their world. Is this something anyone else has experienced, or is it just me on occasion? Excellent. Then we have to look at, all right, so are we just complaining about difficult people, or are we willing and or already doing something about it? So now, if you would, find a different partner. Share with them what's going on that's difficult. Just one example. Work it out. Find another partner. Even if you have to get up out of your chair and go to another table, find another partner. And I want you to do 2 things. One, please share with them your greatest difficulty. Maybe not names, but situation. And then please explain what you're doing about it. 15 seconds, 20 seconds at most. Ready? Find a new partner. What's the greatest difficulty? What are you doing about it? If I may join you in conversation, give me some ideas. And I've heard a wide range of who's difficult and what are we doing about it. Some of you left the office to come here to get away from the difficult person. So help me understand. What is it you're doing to deal with this difficult person? So the concept, that's okay, to paraphrase what Debbie shared, the people that are coming to her constantly asking for the answer, asking for the answer, asking for the answer, and she's trying to develop initiative. So her response is, instead of just giving them the answer, she's saying, you need to go find the answer. Did I cover that? Did I capture it pretty well? When I was a little kid and I used to need to know how to spell a word, I would go to my mom, who is super smart, and I would say to my mom, how do you spell a word? Whatever the word was. And her answer to me every single time, go get the dictionary. I think I'm the only under 50 human being who still owns a hard copy dictionary because I won't let go of it. Oh, yay, we're together. All right. So I still will go look things up in the dictionary because she instilled that habit. Are you aware that we train other people how to treat us? So there is some culpability in them giving us their difficult behavior all the time if we're not maybe clear on what we might be able to do to prevent that from happening in the future. Just a thought. What else? What else are you doing to make the difficulty go away or to deal with it? I heard avoidance over here, one of my favorites, yay. Because if you avoid it, it just disappears, we hope. What else?
Being overly communicative.
Say it again, Julie.
The person I was referring to is non-communicative, so I've tried to be overly communicative.
Got it.
That's hard to say a couple times fast.
It is, overly communicative. You talk a lot. Exactly. So you try to over-communicate the information. This is actually one way as well to eliminate gossip. If people are gossiping, it's very often because they feel like they're missing information. So they're sending out information out into the employee base, waiting until it circulates around, and then it comes back to them, and then they know whatever they sent out was true. This is how gossip works. So if you share more information than they could possibly need, sometimes that will work. But if we have someone who's non-communicative by their nature, that may not be the way to make the difficulty go away. That may actually be the way to make it worse. What else? Yes, ma'am. Leslie.
Mine was, the one I gave out earlier was a coworker talks too much. They're constantly coming into my office talking, and it's usually about non-work related items.
Got it.
So what I initially did to solve it was to shut my door. And then she, well, I didn't want to say anything to her. I thought I would hurt her feelings, but then she knocked.
So we had no choice but to open the door at this point.
Right.
Got it.
And so my table actually came up with, well, why don't you tell her between the hours of 8 and 5, if you want to talk to me about work, that's great. But if you want to talk to me about personal stuff, come in about 8 or 7:30, we'll get some coffee, come in early, and we'll chat. And I said, well, she'll never do that, so that will probably nip it.
So this is what we commonly call setting a boundary.
Correct.
Nice job.
Correct.
Nice
well,
job.
I didn't come up with it, they did.
Hey, nice job, table. Way to
Yes.
go. Good job, table. We often will communicate with people in ways that we don't even realize the impact. We don't even realize many times what we say because we're all operating from our own natural bias. One example is, have any of you ever looked at someone and said, hi, how are you? Okay, I know it's late in the afternoon, but this is not a rhetorical question. Have y'all ever said, hi, how are you? Yeah. Do you know that in this country that is really more of a greeting than an inquiry? Because here's what people do. They walk down the hall. They're like, hey, how are you? They're not even waiting for the response. And we do this all the time. What we also will do in reference to difficult people, and this is one of my favorites, we will say to the person we know to be one of the most difficult people around things like, hi, how are you? Same question, but it's when you stop and you wait for them to respond that you have now opened the door for them to tell you. And the problem is we already know. It's going to be bad. So one thing you can do that's a quick and easy fix, I love these quick and easy tips that come from the tables. I'll share one more. Just say, hi, and keep going. There is no need to engage in the conversation. Just, you don't want to be rude, but just hi, and walk on. The other thing you can do, because these are habit-based reactions that we perform all day long. The other thing you can do is be very careful about what you allow to process inside your head. Now, we've already identified that the vast majority of you talk to yourselves. I got that. When other people talk to you, isn't there also a conversation going on in your brain at the same time? Kind of like now. All of you have this conversation going on while I'm talking. But if someone were to say something to you that hit a button, or was hurtful, or was something that, gosh, you've seen them do this 15 times. She's walked into your office 15 times, and before she ever even opens her mouth, the voices in your head are going, right? And it's typically more negative than positive, yes? In fact, would you like to know the actual numbers? I learned this years ago when I worked with a man named Jack Canfield, which if you may or may not recognize that name. Jack is the co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And I used to be what would affectionately be called a Jack groupie, I think. I used to go to a lot of his seminars and work with him. And not long ago, his nephew actually called me and said, "Can I get the book from you that you gave my uncle?" So that was really just like a very cool moment to talk with his nephew. However, I learned from him a very important statistic, and it is 14 to 1, which you may want to write somewhere in the white space between the yellow box and the remainder of the page. 14 to 1. What that represents is that on average, inside our own head, we say 14 negative things per every single one positive. And that's an average. Some people are higher, some people are lower. Does that number scare anybody else or just me? 14 negative things inside our head per every single one positive. I'll give you an example of exactly how this works. Do any of you own a mirror? One or two people. Do any of you look at it in the morning first thing? Some of you are like, no. Some of you do. Okay, so for example, you get up in the morning, first thing, you look in the mirror, right? And I'm talking naked or not. It doesn't really matter. You're looking in the mirror. Who in here would say confidently and without question, I got my eye over here I'm looking at you. Who would say confidently and without question that you look in the mirror and what you say is something to the effect of, "I'm cool." Yes. Yes. Yay. Yay. Anybody else? Anybody else? No, nobody, no takers. Nobody else. All right. So, when you were 17 years ago, oh, okay, you get credit for years ago. Yay! That's your first homework assignment. All right, good job. So, and we laugh, we giggle. No, I don't do that. What I've discovered is this is also somewhat of a gender issue because men are much more comfortable with saying things like that. They just may not say it out loud. So they look in the mirror and they say, and they may just walk away. Women, just societally speaking, and this is a stereotype, but women typically will really shy away from looking in front of the mirror and saying anything like that. And both genders, what we typically say if we don't say, "I'm cool," or "I rock," or whatever, it sounds a little bit more like, "Ew." Right? Whereas Leslie knows and a couple of other people, I am originally from Texas where big hair is a requirement. I hang on to it for legacy's sakes. You might look in the mirror and do something like this. Whatever you got to do, right? What you say to yourself in the mirror in the morning, if it's not, "I'm cool," or "I rock," or "you're it," or whatever, that's where your 14 to 1 begins. And if that's where that starts, first thing in the morning, whether you're at home or whether you're at a hotel, by the time you are customer facing, how many rounds of 14 to 1 do you think you will have gone through? That is a rhetorical question. And the reason I bring that up is because we tend to take on a lot of what other people say and or do or give to us, and then we own it. And once you own it, it becomes part of your own belief system, becomes part of your own perceptions. We also tend to hang out with people that we know are going to give us their stuff, and yet we do it by habit. We listen to things that we know are going to give us a negative perspective, and yet we do it by habit. So I'll teach you a word that'll stop the processing inside your head and allow you to maybe gain a little more control over the voices in your head. Mind you, I wrote a book called Make Difficult People Disappear, whose star character's name is Sybil. So we have the right context. The word is cancel. Simple, easy, 6 letters, cancel. I'd like for all of you to practice, if you would, say cancel. Cancel. I got to give you a little caveat, perhaps I left off the rest of the instructions. You want to say cancel in your head. don't look at your negative, difficult person straight in the eyeballs and say something like, cancel. They will haul you away for less, so do not do that. You want to say cancel in your head. Scientifically, it literally stops the processing from the conscious to the subconscious and will discontinue your brain from running it through the cycle of processing the information. Sounds simplistic, and it is, and it works, and it's true. So I'd like for you again to practice. You ready? On my count of 3, I'd like for you to say cancel. 1, 2, 3. In your head. In your head. Just make note, it's a silent statement. Please do not, what y'all learned today? How to say cancel. And then sometimes it's just that the people that we deal with are different. Now, some of you are thinking, oh, isn't that sweet? They're different. And if you grew up in the generation I did in which Saturday Night Live was prevalent and you watched the church ladies say, oh, isn't that special? Yes. I don't mean special, short bus different. I mean really different. And the more we know about us and what we need and how we communicate and the habits and actions that we do, and the more we know about all those other different people, that is what allows you to immediately make all that difficulty, that conflict, that stress, that miscommunication, that confusion, that gossip, that challenge you have with their behavior disappear. So what I want to take us to is the opportunity to learn more about, first, who you are, how you do things, and then we'll start pointing out all those other different people and talk about them. Is that fair? You have a couple of handouts on your table right in front of you. One is in full color. One is white with 4 columns. 4 columns. What I'd like for you to do is pull out the handout right now that has 4 columns and, in fact, 18 rows. My emphasis on the word column and row will become important momentarily. However, just grab the handout. Your instructions as we go through this particular abbreviated, very short in-class profile, and I'll explain more about it in a moment, is to choose one word per row. One word per row. Now, as you're going through this, you're choosing one word per row that accurately describes your behavior, at least right now, at least today, in the general scope of things. You will likely glance over at your neighbor's paper. And if you notice that your neighbor has taken great initiative to answer or choose 4 words on the page, meaning one from each column, you please have my permission and I need your help. Please help them understand the difference between a column and a row. All good? Your mission will be to choose one word per row that accurately describes your behavior. I'll give you a few moments to do that. Then I'll explain more about the tool. All right, looks like everybody's had a chance to share their scores. I'm hearing several people say, oh yeah, this is exactly what I thought. I'm also hearing quite a few say, oh, this looks a lot like maybe Myers-Briggs or maybe a DISC profile. Has anyone in here ever taken a personality profile of any kind ever before? Yay! Please understand this tool is not designed to label you as a red, green, yellow, blue, a whale, lion, lamb, or sheep, whatever the labels are out there. There's probably 36 mainstream profiles that I'm familiar with. What I will tell you is that this particular tool, it's called the Core Multidimensional Awareness Profile. You are currently looking at a very abbreviated version. This is for in-class use only. The full tool is online, has about 325 questions. And what it does is allows you to combine the best of 3 different worlds. One is what DISC will tell you, which is how you feel about your behavior. If all you're taking is DISC, all it's telling you is how you feel about your personality or your behaviors. If you take Myers-Briggs, which is also a piece of that is inside the core profile, It is designed specifically to make very complex theory about personality more layperson terms and understandable. And it describes how you function. So here you've got an opportunity to look at how you function and how you feel. And then also what this tool will do is show you how you operate on an average day with increasing amounts of stress. Do any of you have any stress? Couple people. All right. Now, if you have scored high in column A, we have already passed the point where you're like, yep, I get it, lady, move on, I got it, let's go, come on, come on, come on. I get it. So here's what I want to do. First, I want to remind you, if you want this online, please look at the bottom of your handout. It says contagiouscompanies.com/Shepard Sandbox. Please go there if you want additional copies, because after this, you're probably going to want to put your spouse through it. Because here's some interesting information. There's a whole lot more to each of these 4 preferences than we might currently believe. But you already know a little just by the terminology. So what's column A? What's column A? What do we call it? Commander. Commanders are fabulously, stereotypically type A, driven, very competitive, very ambitious, and motivated by, well, what do you think? Power is an option. Money's an option, could be. Success could be. Challenge could, you'll notice very quickly that could be is my real nice way of saying nope. Sorry. Commanders are motivated by get it done. And in fact, I'd ask you to also place that on your colorful handout right above, right at the top of the upper left quadrant. Commanders are motivated by get it done. That's their motivational phrase. Now what that means is that for those who are dominant in this preference, and we all have all 4 preferences, make no mistake. But for those who are dominant in the commander preference, what that means is they see everything as an inhibitor or a contributor to their productivity, period. They operate typically with a list, and they're going to get as many things done as humanly possible. They're gifted at multitasking, and if you are not on their list, you're not getting done. You can carry that as far as you need to into your life. Recognize that commander preferences are the ones that if you walk into their office and it's midday, a little bit of stress, mid-list, and you do something brilliant such as, got a sec? Their response is typically going to be one of 2 things. Either A, yes, I have 3, ready, go? Or no, I don't, make an appointment and come back later. And they're not trying to be rude, well, some of them are, but most of the time they're not trying to be rude. You're not in their list of things that have to get done today. Also, though, look at any gift, any natural trait that's overused can then become a detriment, or what we might refer to in this sense as a difficult behavior. What do commander preferences do when they are under stress? I love it. They stress out. Yep, that's a definite possibility. They get very aggressive. They also become bossy, dictatorial, commanding, overly direct, in your face. They vie for control. Some of you are pointing. That's awesome. And they will argue sometimes just for practice. But when they do, here's what goes on in their head. Had argument. Check. Shared opinion. Check. Typically, one argument. Check. Because everything in their world is about getting stuff done. So when you come to a commander, they're a client, they're a colleague, they're a friend, they're a boss, what you'll also find is that no matter what you say, what's in their head is, what do you want me to do about that? Which makes them not so eloquent and patient when it comes to issues that are not work-related. So when we look at the commander preference, it has great value, as do all other 3. Yet if someone didn't understand that this is how commanders roll, they might immediately assume that person was difficult. You see how that's possible? Who in here has a high column A score? High column A score. Yay! Like a large majority of the room. That's exceptional. All right, moving on. I'll speed it up. If we also, though, look at a very important quadrant similar to organizer in some ways, it would be column B. And what do we call column B? Behaviors? Column B we refer to as organizer. And these are the preferences that dislike being labeled the most. So allow me to tread carefully here. There are many of you in the room who will know people who would score high in column B, and they're going to be much more linear, logical, methodical, process-oriented. They're not terribly expressive. In other words, they don't talk with their hands and face. They are task-oriented, which on your colorful handout, there's a bracket above commander and organizer, and that bracket would be aptly labeled task-focused to show the commonality. So they both have a list. They're both focused on getting things done, but the organizer is motivated a bit differently. It's not all about getting it done. It's about getting it right. They're very keen on accuracy. They find it very important to be accurate. And they're also very good at process discovery and problem solving. If you gave an organizer a long project term or the entire schematic for a convention, and you asked them just to look it over, they're not going to take a quick precursory look. They're going to sit down diligently, review every single line, help you with the grammatical errors, the proofreading, and then also look at the process of setup and execution. And when they come to you and they say, oh no, this is going to go wrong way down here at the end of the event, we often will respond to them by saying, oh, you're being critical. Unfortunately, that is their natural gift, is to find all the ways in which things aren't right. Give them the bandwidth to share with you the ways in which things aren't right. But also recognize what they do when they're under stress and how they typically express themselves. What does it say in your core snapshot that an organizer preference might do when they are stressed? One more time. Withdrawn, cold. They might appear aloof. They might hibernate. They might pull in. They're likely not going to come to you and say, I'm really mad. Whereas a commander, on the other hand, they're expressing themselves, might get so fed up, they're so stressed, and so it's one of these. Yeah, I got it. You're mad. Clear. Got it. 10-4. The organizer's not ever going to do that. They're not ever going to slam a door. They're not ever going to come at you and just... That's not how they operate. In fact, a really excited, totally exuberant, tickled organizer may look a little bit like, I don't know, this. This is an organizer really excited. So what happens is those of us who are more expressive always walk up to these organizers and say, what's wrong? Right? These two preferences are just different. One's not right, one's not wrong. Would you agree? So who in here do we have that's a high-scoring column B? How many high-scoring column B individuals do we have in the room? Oh, yay! Welcome, we have 3, 4, super, 5. Now, here's what I will point out just as a quick difference, because you'll start seeing them all over the place once you know this information. And that is, I asked, how many high-scoring commanders do we have in the room? High-scoring column A's. They all raised their hand. Yep, raised my hand, answered a question, I'm done. I asked how many high-scoring column B individuals are in the room. There may have been just a few, but they all waited until I saw their hand was raised. They all made sure I made eye contact so that I could take an accurate count. There isn't one of you commander people that would have cared what the number was. You're like, yeah, but this is the bunch. Whatever. Get it done, get it right. Very, very different focus. Now, we're going to add some complexity here because we're going to go even further to the different side, and that is we're going to look at the relator preference, which is that column C. Relators are such wonderfully loyal, kind, loving, trustworthy, genuine, laid-back individuals. They will be your lifelong friends. And all the column A high-scoring individuals right now, bless your hearts, are going, bleh. I got it. I got it, because I'm watching some of the facial expressions. It's like, bleh. Oh my gosh. Now, have any of you ever had a bad day? Couple people. Yeah, a bad day. So if you have a bad day, I mean, you're just really beside yourself, bad kind of day, and you need to go to somebody and tell them about your bad day, because commanders are extroverted, so they will go and tell people about their bad day. But if what you are looking for from someone when you go tell them about your bad day is for somebody to be really kind and genuine and sweet and say something like, "Oh, oh," right? Don't touch me.
Commander.
Yeah, got that. If what you want is for somebody to give you that empathy, that awe moment, then for all purposes, find a relator. Do not go to a commander looking for that response. A commander's version of empathy sounds a little bit like this. Wow, sucks to be you. And they're not being cold and ugly, they just don't even get it. They're like, what do you want me to do about that? That's what's in their head. Wow, I'm sorry. Okay, now what? What do I do? Give me my marching orders, give me my action items, okay? You also need to know that relator preferences are wonderful at following directions. In fact, they need direction. Commanders tend to give directions by saying, oh, just go do it. And then they wonder why the relator stands around going, I don't understand. Can you give me more detail? And then the commander gets frustrated because they have to repeat themselves. Well, part of just go do it was not clear. Well, I need more direction. Relators make exceptional followers. They will follow you to the end of the earth. They can also lead. They lead from a very different perspective. Commanders are known as the natural-born leaders. They're the ones who would lead just because they're bored. And the relator preference are the ones who will lead when the need arises and when it helps them to get along better with more people. Relators are motivated by get along. So they will run like a jackrabbit from conflict. They do not like conflict. They will not communicate directly. In fact, a relator will look right at you, nod their head yes, when what's in their head is not no, but heavens no. Because they don't want to say no to you, particularly those of you in this room that are commanders, because it's a little scary to see your reaction. Be careful with assuming everybody else out there has the exact same MO, communication style, needs, and expectations. Because relators are so vastly different from commanders. They're the polar opposite side of the brain. And when you look at relators under stress, what their MO is to become passive-aggressive, to hibernate, to get moody, pessimistic, whiny. They'll go crawl in a hole, think they have no friends, and they should just go eat worms. And then, if they get mad at you, you wound them, you hurt them, they will hold a grudge forever, and they will have a tendency to not get mad, because they're not going to come right at you and just, bah! But they will get even. You just will never know it was them. And we all preferences, have a positive set of behaviors, a moderately stressed set of behaviors, and a negative set of behaviors. So none of what I'm saying about any preference is intended to be critical. We all have great gifts. We also all have normal, stressed reactions. Make sense? Who in here is a high column, wonderful, trustworthy, loyal, empathetic, column C individual? Yay! Excellent, super. And see what relators tend to do, yay! What relators tend to do is they will raise their hand and then they'll look around and make sure all their buddies got taken care of. Because they're motivated by what again? Get along, you got it. Now there's one left that we have not covered. One left that we have not covered. What do we call it? Entertainer. So I will apologize in advance for the 5 of you, 4 of you that are high column B organizer preferences. Just hang tight for the next 5 or so minutes. Because your impression is going to be that I had some great crack for lunch. Because entertainers are the most enthusiastic, excitable, energetic, off-the-chart, charismatic, talkative people you have ever met in your life. They will talk to anyone. anywhere, anytime, any place, regardless of level of interest and or ability to respond. They will engage paint off the wall. They never stop talking. These are the people that you will find at the grocery store who want to make friends with you in line at the grocery store. You ask an entertainer, how many friends do you have? They're like, they don't have enough limbs. If you ask an organizer, how many friends do you have? They'll ask you to define the concept of friend. Very different. Entertainers, though, also are the ones who will often be accused of, and you will experience this, having a broken filter. In other words, they will say anything out their mouth that happens to come to their mind, and often you will watch in observation and say things like, no, she didn't. Does she even know what she said out loud? Really? They also interrupt constantly and add fuel to the fire because their brain processes far more like a pinball machine than a computer. It's all about sights and sounds and senses and colors and ooh, something shiny and ooh, the rabbit, right? But because of that, if you're an organizer preference in particular, you will be talking right to an entertainer. There's total eyeball contact. You know they're there. And you're on item number 3 of your agenda. You're going through a checklist and you're on item number 7. You're covering every single detail diligently, clearly, and what is wrong with them that they're not following you. And then all of a sudden it's like the eyeball marquee. The marquee behind their eyeballs changes, and what you'll see is something along the lines of the word squirrel. It is not a reflection of their intelligence or their intellect or their interest in your topic. It is about their brain processing. That part of their brain processes so much differently than any of the other 3 preferences. Far more different than from the organizer preference than you may expect. I heard several of you say things about when I asked what are they doing that makes them difficult? Well, they never shut up, they never stop talking. I heard one person say, this person's an idea guy. These are your entertainer preferences. And if you don't have an understanding of what's natural for them, then yeah, their behavior might frustrate the dickens out of you, but yours frustrates the dickens out of them. So it works out kind of even. Now, who in here has a high-scoring column D? Yay! Yippee! Yay! Yes, exactly. Yay! Okay, you get a book just for being authentic. Good job. Good job. Because the entertainer is the preference that is most often squashed in a corporate or organizational setting. Rock on. Good job. The question was, so what are you, Monica? What do you think I am? Could be. I love it. I'm a relator, I heard. What else? I heard entertainer. Commander, I've also heard. I'm a hybrid. I'm a cross. Yeah, schizophrenic is a definite possibility. If you're polar opposites, yep.
Like to a T, I'm an organizer, entertainer, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
You're right. Allow me to answer that question and speak to this. 9 years ago, I purchased the license to the core profile. Not because I thought there were no other tools out there that would work. Not because I really just wanted to invest a boatload of money. Not because I had nothing else to do. I purchased the license to use the core profile, and this is what we use in consulting with all of our clients, from Microsoft SeaWorld to the federal government to naval bases to the FAA, which reminded me to speak to that. It was because of the personal impact it had on me. Do any of you have parents? Nah, no, you're hatched. Whatever works. See, I have 2 amazing parents, one of whom is an off-the-chart organizer preference. In fact, she now has a PhD in sociology, which gives her the letters behind her name to have every credible right to analyze the dickens out of the entire human race. Off the chart, organizer preference. Also a member of Mensa at one time, so she's brilliant. She's a big old brain, right? Now, my father behaved in many ways like a relator most of his life, but he is also a veteran and had some issues, so he was very vocal, and sometimes I thought schizophrenic because it was relator, commander. This happened a lot. And yet, I come into the world, both of my parents typically acting much more introverted than extroverted, which, by the way, entertainer and commander are both extroverts, if you want to put that E on the left side of your graph. And what I did in order to be okay with my parents, in order to get love from my parents, in order to feel like I was part of the family, is I squashed all of those extroverted tendencies because I had two parents who had not a solitary clue how to handle a double extroverted child. Now, that's not a criticism about my parents. That is exactly what we in this room all day, every day do all the time. We operate from our own perspective, and so people that don't fall in that perspective do things the way we think they should do. Immediately in this country, they become difficult. Now, whether we want to use difficult or 56 other labels that we've come up with to describe their behavior, the reality is they act differently than what we would do in that scenario. So what I did my whole life is, for probably 25 years, I worked diligently, day and night, to be a relator. Now, you only know a snippet of information about the relator, the commander, the entertainer, the organizer. In fact, right now, I'd say you know enough to be dangerous. But just based on what you know, do I look mild-mannered, laid-back, kind, sweet, and precious to you? I'm just curious. No. But when you suppress all your behaviors and you cover up who you really are, it's kind of like if you can imagine taking a beach ball and shoving it underwater. If you do that for a minute, you notice it. If you do that for a decade, you no longer realize the ball is underwater, right? But something will come along and knock you off track, and you let go of the ball. What happens to it when it comes up? Splash, right? So for 25 years, I held down commander and entertainer behaviors, and all of a sudden, one day I woke up and poof, out they came. Not to mention, I also was causing a lot of stress. So the answer to your question is, in 90 minutes, when I took the core profile, which it's a 90-minute process, I was given permission to be who I was, which is a commander first and an entertainer second. And within 3 days, everybody kept telling me, gosh, you've mellowed. What? I've spent 25 years trying to be mellow and kind and never say a cross word. Now you're telling me I'm mellow? Really? When you're able to authentically be who you are, it takes all the pressure off. It takes all the stress off. You don't have to spend all that energy holding that beach ball down anymore. And you got people you work with that you think are ridiculously difficult, that a lot of that is from they're not able to be who they are. Does that make sense? And when you start looking at some of these cross-polar opposites, and some of the scores you may have show a high score in column A, and then a high score secondarily in column C, or a high score in column B, and then a high score in column D. If you look at your colorful handout, very, 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 very lightly on the box that shows the four-quadrant model, if you hold it up to the light, I bet you can see an overlapping picture of the brain. If you can't quite see it, trust me, it's there. And what that indicates for all of us is that we all have all four. But if you look right at the crosshairs of your diagram, there is in fact a space inside your brain that prevents the location of commander behaviors that are in the back left above your neck and the location of relator behaviors that are in the upper right above your right eyebrow from physically touching. So you can't actually be a commander relator. What that means is that you've been spending a lot of time on conditioned behaviors, what we also refer to as habits. Do any of you have any habits? Anybody got any habits? Really? Yeah, like 6 people. You got to go have a cigarette. Okay, have a good time. In fact, let me point out the habits. I want to say this to make a point because it's often completely unconscious how heavy our habits guide all of our behavior. Quick digression, I apologize. What's the background color of all the handouts you currently have in your hand? White. What do cows drink?
Whatever they feel like. Whiskey.
Many of you are still looking at me as if to say, what? And almost all of you in this room with conviction said, milk. Some of you perhaps even looked at your neighbor and said, well, baby cows drink milk. We call that justification. However, the problem here is, and please don't feel bad, I have asked almost 650,000 people that question in my career, and I will tell you that they all look at me and go, milk? The challenge here becomes, and the point here becomes, if I had given you 10 entire milliseconds to think about the answer to that question, there is not a one of you who would have looked at me and thought or said milk, because you would not have envisioned big fields of cows and big vats of milk. Never have happened. So my question to you is, how many times a day, all day, every day, do you operate out of your own natural bias and say things to people that may have had that little conscious thought, but also when it comes to their needs, their language, their style, made that little sense? See, when you start looking at difficult people, the reality is most people are just different. They become difficult real fast when you expect them to operate differently than what is natural for them. So it puts a little bit different spin on the concept of difficult people. And what I find often happens is that that's great, this data, that's just fabulous. Yay, we have more data. Yay. Now what do we do with it? Now what? And that's our goal for the rest of the afternoon. So far, has this been helpful? I did not. How high is your column B score? Oh, really? Okay, so it's column A that's driving that question. Entertainers are motivated by get appreciated. Get appreciated. Now that you know all four of these quadrant preferences, there are a couple of things I'd like for you to think about. A couple of things I'd also like for you to do. One is give some thought to your most difficult situation, your greatest difficulty that you talked about earlier, and now ask yourself, oh my goodness, is it them? Or is it us? And I'm not going to ask you to share out loud the answer to that question, but it's one that bears asking. Because is it them that's really being difficult? And the answer may be yes. Or is it us who's consistently proliferating our expectations on them that's causing their behavior to not fit what we expect them to do? Then also, say it again. It's them. All right, cool. We can go with that. And then with this thought in mind as well, I'd like for you to put a star in the box on your colorful handout that you think is probably the quadrant of your most difficult person. Think about your most difficult person, put a star in the quadrant that you think is really, yeah, that's where they live. And if you would also now put a check mark in the quadrant where you live on the colorful handout, whatever your highest column score was. And now place a smiley face in the quadrant of your best friend. Alrighty then. Take a trip to the grocery store, if you. Commanders, your best friends are almost always going to be people you work with, just FYI. Almost always. Check mark in the quadrant where you live. Smiley face in the quadrant where your best friend lives. And last but not least, if you would, place a heart in the quadrant where your loved one lives. This could be a spouse, this could be a child, this could be a girlfriend, partner, boyfriend, mate, whatever you want to look at. Whichever loved one you want to pick. And then some fascinating data that might be valuable to you. Do any of you have families? Couple. Kind of goes along with the parents' question. If you have families, either the ones you came from or the ones that you are immediately involved in, our anecdotal data, and this is anecdotal, not scientific, but just out of the several thousand profiles we've done out of our office, 97% of the time, a family of 4, you will have one person who occupies each one of these quadrants naturally. So those of you that have teenage children, and or children that you don't think you get along with, and or have any issues about, well, my husband gets along better with that child than I do, so there's some guilt, or vice versa. Recognize that there's a real good chance you've got a perfectly balanced team at home in that one of you is a commander, one of you is an organizer, one of you is a relator, one of you is an entertainer. If you're the relator mom, you are going to get along least well with the commander child. If you are a commander mom, you're going to get along least well with the relator child. If you're an organizer parent, you're going to get along least well with the entertainer parent. Not because you don't try, not because they don't love you, but because you don't for a moment get each other. You're coming from a completely different vantage point. Does that make sense? Yeah? So what I'd invite you to do now is, as a table, I just want you to spend a moment seeing if you can identify 4 immediate members of the team you work with. Because let's apply this not only to the family, but to the workplace. And several of you have team members there at the table. You'll notice there's a grid that has 4 spots in it. And I want you to identify 4 key members of the office. You are one, and then 3 other key members. You're welcome to work with your table mates if you'd like to discuss it out loud, or if you'd prefer to do it on your own, you're welcome to do that as well. Take a moment, see if you can identify what's the dominant quadrant of 4 team members. Great question, let me clarify. In the grid, let me give some clarifying directions. In the grid that has the 4 numbers to the right of the core quadrant model box, in that grid, my recommendation to you is this. Pick 3 people beside yourself, take their initials, put them in your head, and reverse them. Write down those initials in reverse, and then write down whatever preference you think they are. The reason for this is, if in fact this handout were to make its way back to your office, you likely don't want to have 3 other people's names on a handout entitled "Make Difficult People Disappear." Probably a career-limiting move, not a good plan. So take their initials, use code, make up a name, whatever works for you, but probably just initials and the dominant preference. I'm going to hop in because I'm curious. If you knew this data about everybody in your office, would it help you to now understand why they behave the way they behave? And if you knew this data about everybody in your office, would it keep you from taking all their behaviors personally? Some of you yes, some of you no. Have any of you ever taken somebody else's behavior personally? It's typically called a perception. Do any of you have perceptions? All right, I'm going to make the questions much easier. It's close to break, and it's 3 o'clock. The biorhythms are dwindling. Have any of you ever been in a hallway? If not, please proceed with me. When we go on break, we'll take a field trip. But if you've been in a hallway where you were on the perfectly good side of the bed, this was either at an event or in your office, and you walk down the hallway, you're in a great mood. You see a coworker coming towards you. Now, you know them well enough to say hi. You may not be their best buddy, but you know them well enough to say hello. So you look at them, and mind you, you don't say, "How are you?" You just say hello. And you look at them, and you say, "Hi," or "Howdy," or "Yo," or the head bob, whatever. Whatever you do, you greet them. And they say nothing. They brush your shoulder and they walk on by. Help me out. What's your perception of what just happened there? Stuck up. What else? What did I do to tick them off now? They don't like me. Wow, this is where 66% of the population goes immediately. And it's a perception. But if you hang on to that perception long enough, you take that behavior personally, then it becomes a belief. And any belief you hang on to long enough becomes a habitual way that you explain the things inside your head. Do you see full circle? Have any of you ever had a perception in a hallway similar, assumed they didn't like you, and that changed the nature of the relationship going forward for at least some time? Yeah. That has to do with the voices in our head being the difficult person we want to make disappear. And that's really more about self-esteem. And the numbers I have are that 2 out of 3 people in this country have a low sense of self-esteem or confidence. 2 out of 3 have a low sense of self-esteem or confidence. Everybody take a moment, look to the person on your left. Or pick a direction. If you're struggling with left, just find somebody. Now take a moment, look to the person on your right or the other side. Okay? Excellent. You've just looked at 2 other people. We add yourself into that mix. That makes 3 people. If we adhere to this ratio, 2 out of 3 have a low sense of confidence or self-esteem. That means out of each small group, only 1 of you is okay. Who is it? Okay. So the ones who are okay are the ones who get to go on break. No, I'm just kidding. Why don't we take a moment here to get a refresh, a rejuvenation, and cookies. So if you would, take your confidence, and your self-esteem. Let's take a 20-minute break. Of lucky folks that will be in the room today, because we are actually going to draw for 2 copies of Make Difficult People Disappear. I have my handy-dandy blue bag that magically matches the books. I'm not sure how that happened. But if you would like to be entered in the drawing for the books, if you just put your name in here, or business card or something, in here, then we will draw before we leave today. So 2 people will walk away with their very own autographed copy. I will start it over here, and I'll let you kind of pass it around and manage that. Okay. So a couple of other pieces of information with reference to this core profile. I love it. Several of you have come up and said, this reminds me of something I took that was used these labels, or this is very helpful, and it helps me understand who people are. I would also share that it helps clearly categorize people, so do be careful with the amount of information you currently have. Because everybody has all what? All 4. Everybody has all 4. And what I would encourage you to do is go back to the team that you have the privilege of working with and look at not just 4 of them, but all of them. Here's an example of what can happen in some teams. Not long ago, I worked with, and still do, with Microsoft. Microsoft Brazil is a client of ours. And I went in and worked with them individually, consulting and going through their profiles and helping the team communicate even more effectively. This is something we do in organizations. And we profiled every single one of the senior leaders. And then I produce a whole comprehensive report that shows what's missing and what are the motivating factors and key stress triggers, and might maybe consider hiring different preferences, and what are all the dynamics with these profiles mixed together. Now I do color code them. So the commanders are red, the organizers are green, relators are blue, and entertainers are yellow. I produce this entire report, and the entire first page has a graph. It takes up almost the entire page with the preferences color-coded. I'm saying all of this to tell you that the entire graph was all red. All of it. And this is name, first preference, secondary preference. So there should be lots of colors in there. Yeah, no, it was all red, with the exception of one person who was a commander organizer. So we had one little green box. And while for those of us in this room who are commanders, I know you're in your head thinking, man, they get a lot done. They get more done in an hour than most people get done in a week, and that's true. But they also intimidate and scare the living daylights out of almost everyone that they encounter, because the entire workforce is not all commanders. The leadership layer is. So when we started looking at how do you mix things up, how do you make things more effective, then over the course of the next 6 months, we balanced out the team, and frankly, they now get more done. If you have all commanders on a team, you will miss things like creativity and innovation. While they are good in some cases in both of those things, they also typically are moving too fast to stop and be creative. If you have all relators on the team, they will not take a lot of initiative because they're waiting to be told what they need to do. If you have a lot of entertainers on the team, you will have these wildly, fabulously creative ideas and zero follow-through. No execution whatsoever, but a humongous white dry erase board with big ideas in pretty colors. If you have all organizers on the team, you will find a frequent occurrence of what we call analysis paralysis. And they struggle with making decisions because they're constantly cycling through and cogitating through all of the conditions, the what-ifs, the if-then tables, and they will have the world's most magnificent spreadsheet with 15 worksheet tabs at the bottom, but may or may not get stuff completed. So recognize that there's a balance required both at work and in your family and in your friends. So the more you start paying attention to this conscious awareness of who's around you, the more helpful and effective this can be. It also alters your expectations. Do any of you have expectations of the people that you work with? Okay, well, let's make this easier. Do any of you have expectations of your spouse? Couple? I'm not necessarily going to invite you to enumerate those for us, but I am going to speak to expectations for a moment. Any of you ever seen a Jack Russell dog? Yeah? Give me some descriptors. What's a Jack? If you were to describe a Jack Russell dog, what would you say are the descriptions? Wow, in unison. Hyper! All right, we got that. What else? Mean. Needy. Oh, got it. I've never envisioned a dog to be needy, but yeah, I'm with you. I'm thinking I agree. What else? Hyper, needy. What else? Insistent. Crazy. Independent, but will chase anything at will, right? If you want a Jack Russell to move, all you got to do is throw something, and it goes. If you're not familiar with a Jack Russell, there are these little white, black, and brown, typically terriers. They're about this big, and they are constantly moving. Just blah, 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 right? Any of you ever seen a German Shepherd dog? Please help me in contrast explain the attributes of a German Shepherd. Commander. Isn't it funny how we can assign personality preferences now to dogs? I have a couple of horses up in Ocala. I live here in Orlando, and I have some horses up in Ocala. I play polo on the weekends. And not long after I started using this with great frequency, I assigned personality profiles to my horses. It's kind of funny. So I get it. So German Shepherds, commander. All right. What else? How else would you describe a German Shepherd? Loyal. Aggressive, perhaps. Protective. It's funny, even my posture changes. We're talking about a German Shepherd, and I start getting a little more stand upright. And so they are a bit more regal. They're a bit more maybe intimidating in some cases. Strong, okay. Not the same as Jack Russell, right? All right, so I want you to imagine walking down the street. If you need a field trip for that, it's a longer walk, but we can work on it. Walking down the street, and you see somebody who's got a Jack Russell dog. But your expectations are that this dog would behave like you've just described to me a German Shepherd would behave. Well, if your expectations are that this dog would behave like a German Shepherd, yet what you're witnessing and seeing is a dog acting like a Jack Russell, would you be disappointed? I love it. I would be confused. Think this through. If you're looking at a Jack Russell dog, but you expect it to act like a German Shepherd, you might be confused. You might be surprised. And if you were really hoping it was going to act like a German Shepherd and it was really important to you for it to act like a German Shepherd, would you be disappointed? Yeah. Huh. So think about the people you work with. Do you have some Jack Russells that you're expecting to be German Shepherds? Do you have some German Shepherds that you're expecting to be Jack Russells? This is where our expectations get us into trouble. Because we're always and ever walking around with our own set of glasses on where we see the world through whatever our dominant preference is. And for that reason, every preference has its own unique set of needs. So we're constantly trying to get our own needs met. And that set of glasses, that natural bias, leaves us assuming everybody else has the exact same needs we do. This is the root cause of a lot of conflict, a lot of confusion, a lot of miscommunications, a lot of stress, and quite a number of divorces. And I'm not attempting to oversimplify what could be a very complex situation, yet I will tell you that it is not anywhere near as complex as we often try to make it. Does that make sense? Do any of you have any needs? Yeah, I don't even want to know. Flip over your handout, the colorful one if you would, because I want to dig deeper here into this needs category. I think it will help elucidate some points, give you some additional guidance, and we're also going to apply this entire concept to recognizing members of the team, being able to understand who your clients are at a moment's eyeball, being able to see some preference traits immediately so that you don't have to walk around with this profile in your hand to every client and go, excuse me, sir, before I talk to you, would you just fill this out? We'll work on helping you to apply this rapidly, accurately, and effectively. But on the back, you'll notice that there are 4 boxes with 3 lines apiece that I'm asking you to identify what do commanders need? What do organizers need? What do entertainers need? What do relators need? And by needs, I should probably clarify. These are things that without it would create stress. For example, a commander has a need for efficiency. That means you want to get to the point in as short a route as possible. In fact, commander's favorite phrase is typically be bright, be brief, and be gone. At least so I'm told. Now also though, organizer traits are slightly different. For example, they have a need for recognition for very specific traits and accomplishments. In other words, you don't want to go to an organizer and just say something silly like, way to go, high five, Dana, I'm so glad you're here, yay! Because an organizer would really wonder what was wrong with you. Instead, you want to say something like, gosh, Dana, I so appreciate your rapt attention and you're taking notes, and I can see you're really taking in this information. Thank you for participating in that way. Right? And the organizer's going, oh, that's awesome. Awesome. Because it's very specific. Whereas entertainers, they just need recognition for walking in the room. You understand the difference? Okay. I'm going to give you a list of items here, and I'd like for someone at the table to be assigned as a scribe, because we'll figure out, if you will, where each needs I'll share with you should fit. I'm going to let you work on this as a table. So as a table, if you would, act like you are an entire group. This should be difficult for the 2 of you. Act like you're an entire group, and if you would, choose a scribe in your group. We're going to do this by the following method. Or you can just pick your own scribe. Ladies and gentlemen, before I turn you loose, a couple of quick tips. Number 1, we'll use a method for helping you pick your scribe, and the method is called the point plus system. That means that on my count, you'll be able to point to the person that you would like to have be the scribe for the group. Ready? 1, 2, 3, point. Excellent, yes! Well, wait a minute, whoa. It's called the point plus method for a reason. Because whoever in your group was now pointed at the most, whoever received the most points now gets to pick the scribe.
Love it.
Did you guys get your cards in here? Yeah? I don't know if they did over here. All right, so the scribe in your group. Did you get to put your cards in here if you want the book? Okay, good. Did you all get to do? We're getting there. The scribe in your group needs to write down the following words. Are you ready? All right, you want to write down the words. Action. Reassurance. Dun, 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 dun. Logic. Details and facts. Just the facts, ma'am. Facts. Sense of control. Friendship. Ability to express themselves. Guidance. Guidance. Ability to express themselves. Guidance. Stability. To be right. No, just to be right. Okay. If you didn't hear Debbie, she said all the time. Followed by, last two, challenge and freedom from control and detail. Ooh. Dun, dun, dun. So you now have a healthy list of 12 words. Double check, make sure you got all 12 words on your list. And your goal with that list of 12 words is to place 3 words from your list in each of the 4 needs boxes. So you want to figure out which 3 from your list of 12 go in each of the 4 boxes. As a group, you're trying to identify what each preference needs out of this abbreviated list. I'll give you a couple of minutes to work together and figure that out. Ready, go. Those of you that are organizer preferences will be tickled and delighted to know that I am actually going to give you the right answers. Yay! And I love it. Most of the groups, the scribe was the lone organizer at the table. And then there was also a couple of groups in which the organizer, bless you, was so focused on not wanting to mess up their own handout, they wrote on a separate sheet of paper so they could then transfer the right answers later on. You'll start seeing these traits come up all over the place. Help me understand, give me an idea. What did you put down for commander? Action, ding, 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 ding. Yes, action is for commanders, absolutely. What else? Yep, sense of control, you got it. Challenge, good try, good try. Commanders need, now recognize, in the full comprehensive profile, there's about 8 needs for every preference. For the sake of time, we're shortening up the list, so I'm giving you some of the top 3. Commanders have a need for action, challenge, sense of control. They also have a need for results and efficiency, just so you know. So what this means when I say what they need is that commander preferences, without something that's challenging them, without a sense of control over at least their own destiny or performance, without some action, without some results, it creates stress. And once you create stress for a preference, they then start acting all the negative ways that get us calling them difficult. So this is a great way to start self-managing. If you start finding that you're becoming demanding or bossy or aggressive, or you start barking at people for whatever reason, and you're a high column A person, then recognize that really what's going on at the end of the day is your needs aren't being met. So find a way to go get action, results, challenge, efficiency, and a sense of control. Very oftentimes, if you do something outside of the office that's a hobby where you can work your hands, racquetball, tennis. This is why I play polo. On the weekends, I go whack the dickens out of a ball. It's a great stress reliever. But find a way to go get your own sense of needs being met. It'll reduce your stress immediately. Good? Make sense? What does the organizer preference need? What do you have? logic to be right, and details and facts. Good, Melissa. Excellent. Yep. Logic to be right, details and facts. They also have a need for, as I mentioned earlier, recognition for very specific accomplishments. Very specific accomplishments. And they have a need typically also for stability. Now there's another preference on your page that also needs stability, so you've not done anything wrong. Out of the three you were given, stability does not belong in the organizer category necessarily right now. But organizers do not like and or embody rapid change. So the moment you're in an organizational situation in which things are changing rapidly, the organizers will start to experience some stress-related behaviors. And they'll start to shut down, and they'll start to not respond. And you'll then, as a commander who's also under stress when things change, commanders will go after the organizers and say, okay, well, what's wrong? Let's get this fixed right now, right now, right now. And the organizer's going, dude, back away, back away, back away. And then the commander wants to get results right now. So the commander's going, but we got to fix this right now. We got to fix it right now. What's your answer? What's your answer? What's your answer? And the organizer's saying, I need time to think about my answer. And so it just gets worse. Do you see how this could happen? So those of you that are lovely, fabulous, direct commanders, when you deal with an organizer client, recognize that your stressed behaviors stress out the organizer preference. So know that if what you really want is your results, the less you breathe down their neck, the faster you will get the results. Give them a little space to be able to make decisions. It's very difficult for the naturally impatient commanders. What about relators? What do you have for relators? Reassurance, good. What else? Stability, good. And guidance. Reassurance, stability, and guidance. Could not have set up a better example for this if I had tried to. Do you remember when Richard stood up when we first went to break and he said, I need all the blue-shirted Shepard people up here, we got to have a meeting? What did the whole room do? It's like he called him to the principal's office, for crying out loud, right? This is exactly what happens when anyone says to a relator, hey, can you come and talk to me at 3 o'clock this afternoon? We need to have a meeting. The relator's brain is going, danger, 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 because they're concerned that you're messing up their security, their stability, which they also need, and they didn't get reassurance, because commanders don't need reassurance. So we're not inclined to naturally say, oh, by the way, this meeting at 3 o'clock that I've just asked you to attend, it's no big deal, you're not in trouble, and yes, you get to keep your job, right? Commanders don't think that way. So when the commander boss or the organizer boss, it's the large percentage who gets promoted into leadership, says to a relator frontline employee, I need to meet you later on today, the relator spends the rest of the day flipped out until the meeting. You want to reduce some difficult behaviors? You want to not have that meeting with someone who is whiny, mopey, pessimistic, and thinks the sky is falling before they ever open your door? Give them some reassurance right after you say, meet me at 3. This is about modifying your communication to meet the needs of others so you don't then have to encounter their difficult reactions. They're just being difficult because their needs aren't being met. You're not psychic and neither am I, but now you have the key code as to how to meet some of their needs, which will make some of their difficulty disappear. All starting to come together? Rock on. What about entertainers? What are their needs? Expression. They need the ability to express themselves. I love it. La, what's this? Jazz hands. I don't even know what that is, but okay. Yay! Yeah, I'm still not very good at it. Okay, give me a lesson later. They need the ability to express themselves, freedom to express themselves. What else do they need? Friendship and freedom from control and detail. Because we have a large number of commander folks in the room, I'm going to ask this question. Commander folks, when you are stressed out and you need results, when? now, or yesterday is actually much preferable. So when you need results now or sooner, what do you start telling people they need to do? Do this because... I love it. It's not very popular now in corporate culture because I said so, right? And that may be what you're thinking, but it may not come out your mouth. If you were to say that to an entertainer who needs freedom from what? Oh. How quickly do you think they're going to jump to, hop up, and meet your needs? Now, this doesn't mean that you need to then say, well, when you get a minute, but also recognize that when commanders say, when you get a minute, it's only them trying to soften their natural direct tendencies, and what they really mean is not when you get a minute, they mean now. Just for translation's sake, right? But when an entertainer is trying to get stuff accomplished, they're trying to get it accomplished so that they get what? What are they motivated by? Get appreciated. So everything that an entertainer does is so that they get appreciation. So if their need is to have freedom from control and detail, the ability to express themselves, and friendship, also popularity, you may want to jot that down, what might you be able to do for an entertainer to really motivate them to go do whatever you want them to do? Right, I love that. Okay, I have to come back to this first. Put it in a Broadway show. That's awesome. That was priceless. Put it in a Broadway show. I'm going to have to remember that. Yeah, make a production. Today's agenda will be with costumes and all. But what I heard you say was, oh, it would be so awesome if you would do this for me, right? And now all the organizers in the room are going, bleh. We can no longer expect people to do exactly what we need them to do. You've got to be consciously aware of what they need you to do, what they need from you. If what you're wanting is for people to just freaking do their jobs, or for them to do what you ask them to do, or for that matter, just do what they said they would do, then very often paying attention to these little needs is going to save you truckloads of time, effort, stress, and energy. It may seem silly now, it may seem awkward now, but you're trying to meet their needs, not trying to change yours. Yes, sir? What about the key word anticipation? Tell me what you mean. Excellent. So let me paraphrase. What this gentleman is saying, tell me your name? Bob. What Bob is sharing with us is, what about anticipation? Well, how do you go about anticipating, say, for example, a commander's needs and giving them the information you know they're going to ask you for before they even ask for it? Am I correct? Is that what you said? So if we look at the commander needs, which are what on your list? Action, control, challenge, and I added one in there, results and efficiency. So if I'm a commander in my office and I have an employee that comes to me who has already sat and given some thought as to what it is I might ask or what it is I might need, and comes to me and provides me with answers to questions I have not even asked yet, therefore giving me immediate results, being very efficient, and showing me they take action, how do you think I as a commander might view this person? Promoted. Does that answer your question?
Not necessarily, because I would think, what else are you wasting your time on that I haven't asked you?
Okay, that's just pessimism. I understand it's not a broad brush, it doesn't apply to everything. But in general scope, I think, Bob, that's your answer, that they would love that. Sir? Well, this is true. You are taking a little bit of control away. It is not necessary to meet all their needs all the time. Recognize that the fewer needs you meet with greater frequency, the more stress they will have. But it's not your every waking goal to pay attention to all 9 of their needs all the time. That would make you feel a bit schizophrenic. But if you take away just a little sense of control, but you give them 3 other big hitters, fine and dandy. Does that help? Yes, ma'am. Melissa. Get along? Yes, it is wrong to make that assumption. Yes, it is wrong to make that assumption. Great question. Here's the very cool part about personality profiles. You've taken 1 or 2 before. Secondly, you and I both know that you can put 2 commanders in a room and they're going to come from different backgrounds, different experiences, and they may have different actions. Generally speaking, they share needs, but they are not the same person. We all have all 4. So a commander entertainer was going to behave very differently than a commander organizer. So all commanders won't necessarily get along. Plus, you've got some commanders that are operating habitually negatively. They act like they're under stress 24/7. So they're going to come across being dictatorial, bossy, direct, overbearing all the time. They're not going to get along well with the ones who are well-developed and who are handling stress differently. So it's not fair to say any one of all preferences will get along with the other, because as I am fond of saying, no human being fits neatly and cleanly into one quadrant or another. This is where other profiles, in my humble opinion, go wrong. Don't you dare go back to the office and label everybody's office door with what you think is their dominant quadrant. Don't you dare go back and make people wear name tags with a little red ribbon if they're commanders. Because commanders can act like relators. They can demonstrate relator behaviors when the situation dictates it. Organizers can be fun-loving and lovable and jovial and colorful when the situation dictates it. Now, it's not ever going to look like the entertainer does when they do it, but we all have all 4. It's about understanding where someone dominantly lives, and the expectations they have of their own behavior is what dictates what comes out when. Yes, sir.
Is there any combination that's best for a working team?
Is
typically?
there any, say the
Like,
question
for
again?
example, a working team of 2 might be good as a commander and organizer. Or is there any studies or examples of the best combination, I guess?
It's a great question. Is there any study or example, in case you didn't hear, of the best combination of people? I would actually take this into a personal context. Are any of you married? 1 or 2 people. My humble observation, I'm rapidly thinking through what all I'm about to say out loud. The filter check is going on. My observation with coaching clients, corporate clients, people that I work with, audiences, et cetera, those who've taken the profile, is that oftentimes in first marriages, people will marry their opposite, which for a while makes a great team. Notice I said the word first. What can often happen with opposites is opposites attract, and then they attack each other. When both stress rises and effort wanes, those opposites can have a tendency to no longer see eye to eye, and it creates a lot of problems. The same would be true in a work team. Now, on second marriages, what I've noticed, and I've just now started sort of tracking this data, is that very often you will have either identical quadrants marry each other and or quadrants that share a side marry each other. And by that I mean, on your colorful handout on the front side, you'll notice that commanders and entertainers share a side. They share extroversion in common. They're both extroverted preferences. Organizer-relators, they share a side. They're both introverted. Commander-organizers, they share a side. They're both task-focused. Entertainer-relator, they're both people-focused. So what I would say in answer to your question, for a work sense, very often the ideal combination are those that share sides, or if you put opposites together, if there's a very clear delineation of whose role is what and whose outcome is expected from who. In other words, role clarity, job definition, job descriptions, which is a lot of what we do when we consult with organizations. But there are no relevant data points right now to say that, generally speaking, commanders and organizers always work well together. There's just too many outlying factors to be able to answer that with that kind of clarity. Does that give you some good intel? Cool. Any other questions? Again, the filter checker is going on. Right, he's been married 4 times, so he's tried them all out. Exactly. Keep better track of your data to figure out which one works better for you. Great questions. When we start applying this to the workplace, could you use this data in coaching? Do any of you coach people? So if you're a boss and you have an employee and you need to coach them for improved performance, could you use this to your better conversational skills in coaching them? You bet, because if you're coaching somebody who's a relator and up till now you've been coaching them to be more commander-like, how's that working out for you? This is where we come to. When you're coaching, you got to look at, all right, who are these people? How do you help them be the best person they are versus how do you help them be the best mini-me of you? That's where leaders often make the mistake. Could you also use this in recognition? Okay, maybe I should start at a baseline. Do any of you like recognition? Do any of you do anything worth recognition? Ah, I love it. The entertainer, every day. Are you familiar with the fact that not only this data would apply, but there's also 4 different kinds of recognition? Are you familiar with that or no? That is a rhetorical question, not a rhetorical question. There are 4 different kinds of recognition, and clearly you add on to the fact that entertainers need recognition all the time. Organizers need recognition for specific events. Commanders typically don't need recognition for anything at all. They move too fast. Their recognition is, got it done, thanks for playing, and they move on. Right, they're like, yep, check, move on. My recognition is, woo, my list is done, right? And then relators will be happy with whatever you share with them. And I'm not meaning to be, please don't take that critically. I mean, this is kind of a general truth. But there are 4 different kinds of recognition that are incredibly important for you to also pay attention to in order to be effective in using this information. The first is public recognition. On the back side, there's a woman with her hands up in the air, and number 1 through 4. Yeah, she's a little entertainer-like, isn't she? First is public recognition. The second, what's the opposite of public? Private. Such an astute group. But these are often misunderstood and misconstrued and very hard to understand which one is which. So if I may, I'd like to have a volunteer join me for 10 seconds of reasonably painless behavior right here up on top of the stage. Just a volunteer, hop up here, reasonably painless behavior, 10 seconds. I knew you would join me. Okay. So for the sake of helping to clarify these 2 preferences, by the way, would all of you please say hello? Would you prefer me to introduce you with your last name or your first name? First. Very good. Yeah, I got that. Would everyone say hello to Linda? Just say, hey, Linda. Hey. Good job, right. Feels good, doesn't it? Yeah, okay. Great. Here's what I would ask you to do, though. On my count of 3, I would like for us to demonstrate for Linda some public recognition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let her take center stage, and on my count of 3, you all are going to hop up out of your seats, scream, cheer, clap, flip out so that they hear us down at the lobby, which is in fact 8 miles that direction. But hop up for just 30 seconds and just flip out for Linda. You ready to go? Ready? 1, 2, 3. High five, girl, high five. All right. Yay! Nicely done. Linda. Thank you very much. Was that public recognition? Do you now see why I asked for a volunteer? Because if I had mandated someone to stand up here, they would have been mortified that I did that if they were not a public person. And what you find is people who love public recognition, and she did it so well, I could not have scripted it better, is they do what's typically called grandstanding. And it's a positive thing. But this is how you can immediately spot someone who prefers and craves public recognition, because they'll do just what she did. Right? Because they love it. They love it. Now, if you are a private recognition person, and I put you on stage, when chanting your name in a ticker-tape parade and stuff falling out of the sky and handed you a trophy in front of the entire group in this room, you would find every single way to never again get on this stage. When it comes to recognition, is that really what you're trying to reinforce? Yet I watch companies do this all the time. They will provide public recognition to very private people and then wonder why their results next year are not equally as good. Recognition is about motivating performance. Using the core data is about motivating behavior, about communicating in a way that they understand. It's important for you to understand the recognition types in order to drive performance. Now, private recognition is handled very differently, because those who are private in their recognition style, they would much prefer you to just find them in a hallway. You remember what that is, right? And approach them and simply say, hey, Debbie, thank you so much. You really did a great job. I appreciate all that effort you put forth and the results that it created. Thanks. See, she's like, yeah. And those of you in this room that are public are like, what? In fact, the public people right now are thinking, where are all those other people you need to be telling, and where is my party? Hello? Just a minor difference. And then you tack on two other types of recognition. One of them is tangible. Tangible. And the fourth, intangible. Go, girl. Good mind reading skills. So if I were to give somebody a high five, in fact, yeah, Lauren, is that tangible or intangible? Okay, I've heard a wide variety of answers. If I high-five someone, unless they walk around all day long going, look, she fived me, I'm never going to watch it again. Even then, it's still intangible. Tangible means it's something you can touch and feel and hold and squeeze and call it George, right? If you remember that. Cash is actually only tangible until it's spent. And then it becomes this very poor motivator for performance. But tangible is like the tchotchkes, the stuff, the certificates. In fact, at one point I used to work with a very large wireless company. No longer is in existence, it's now been morphed into some other large wireless company. But at one time I was the regional training director for a company by, well, I won't tell you the name of it, but it was a logo that looked like this, and it was neon orange. Okay? So, which if you're not from this country, it was a big wireless company, okay? It's now part of AT&T. But I was responsible for the recognition, motivation, development training of 22 trainers across a 5-state region in 5 different call centers. And one of them was very tangible. One payday, I thought I would just recognize them a little bit extra, just do something kind of cute and fun, because we were going through a heck of a lot of change, and it was just a little frenetic all the time. So I went out, my goofy little self, and I bought payday candy bars to give them on payday, in addition to their paycheck. Please understand, they were not replacing one with the other. And it was just fun, and I had a high propensity, I wouldn't have used these terms at the time, but I had a high number of entertainers on the team. These were professional trainers, so they had a lot of entertainer around them, so they thought that was all very cool. They were like, yay, gifts, presents, yay. So I gave one of them a payday candy bar. Now, I only visited the call center about once every 6 weeks because I had multiple states, so I was constantly traveling. And I gave this one team in Mississippi payday candy bars, one of whom was very tangible. And what he did is he took the payday candy bar and he set it on his desk. right on the edge, so that it was visible for all, like a nameplate. Okay? 6 weeks go by, and I come back to this call center. The payday bar is still on his desk. At this point, it darn near has fossilized, right? And I started asking. I was like, really? He never, what's the deal with this? And he said, my other team members, other coworkers said, oh, you wouldn't believe it. People have come by his desk and said, hey man, you gonna eat that? Oh no, my boss gave this to me. Really? For a 99-cent candy bar? The people that are tangible are serious about their tangible stuff. Now, you got a lot of people that you work with at trade shows in particular that couldn't care anything about all the tchotchkes and the lanyards and the squish toys and the glasses and the bracelets and the la, all of that stuff that whole companies are built around. But the tangible people, they're the ones that show up to the trade show a day early with an extra bag because they want to collect it all, right? Your clients, though, are also the ones who are tangible. They're the ones who need a receipt in hand. They're the ones at the end of a training class who need a certificate, whereas the intangible ones couldn't care less. They'll walk by the certificate table and go, ooh, look, my name. Yeah, whatever. And they keep walking. So here's what I would ask you. How do you know who's who? Could you tell who's who just by looking? Some of it you could. Do any of you have a boss? All you Shepard people say yes. Have any of you ever been in your boss's office? Okay, so if your boss, now mind you, everybody is 2 of the 4. So you're going to have public tangible, public intangible, private intangible. When you go back and you map out your team, you want to use 2 of the 4 for everybody. But let's say you go into your boss's office. And in your boss's office, I've never been in Richard's office, so this will be fun to see what happens. If you go into your boss's office and on the wall, there is every single plaque, certificate, degree, ribbon, award, even the 2nd grade 6th place potato sack ribbon is on the wall. Would you say they're public or private? Public. Would you say they're tangible or intangible? So we can see just by watching. The other way you can tell, have any of you ever bought a gift? Have you ever bought the kind of gift that you walk in the store and you see this gift, and I mean, it's such a compelling gift that it's like the skies opened up, the light shone on the pillar, and the angels started to sing, right? Women know what I'm talking about. Men are like, I don't get it. But you walk into the store and it's like, oh, that's what I need to have right there. And most of the time, it's not because you think the person for whom you're supposed to be buying the gift would love it, but because who loves it? Yeah. We buy gifts all the time because we think it's awesome, and so should you, right? We do the same exact thing with motivation. We do the same exact thing with communication. We do the same exact thing with almost everything we do for other people. It is very hard to get out of your own head and communicate with someone in their language. It is very hard to recognize someone else the way they want to be recognized without taking into consideration what you need. This is why you'll hear a vast complaint from workforces who are led by commanders. We don't get enough recognition. Yeah, because commanders don't need a lot of it. So they're not thinking about giving it to you. But also pay attention to, for this reason, what people give other people. Let's say you've got 2 coworkers. One stayed late to help the other. Let's say you had a big project, you had to stay late, and maybe a coworker stayed to help you. Do you have any coworkers? Give me a name. All right, Liz. So Liz, you stayed to help Michelle. Oh, isn't that special? How nice of you. Wow. So Michelle had to stay late. Liz offered to help. So the next day, Michelle brings in cookies for Liz. Now, is Michelle likely tangible or intangible? Tangible, because she's giving her what she would like to have. Pay attention to what other people do and it's a great clue as to what they need. Does this make sense? Ah. So how do you go back and figure out what everybody is? How do you go back and apply this to what they need? How do you go back and figure out, all right, how do I make my difficult people disappear? Is that your goal, to make difficult people disappear? Maybe it's now to accept them. Some of you are still saying, yeah, it's exactly what I want to do, as fast as possible. If you want to make them go away, take everything we've talked about today and boil it down to 4 key factors I want you to start looking for from now on. It's very difficult for you to take today's session and boil it all down in your head so that the next person you see, you can take 3 hours of material and go, oh, you're yeah, and make sure you're correct. But there are some very good indicators you can look for that'll make this easier for you. On the bullets down at the very bottom next to the man with the vice around his head, first thing I want you to look for is how much they talk with their hands. Second thing I want you to look for is whether or not they have facial expressions. Third thing I want you to look for is how do they operate when they are under stress? And fourth thing, what do they do when they get mad? When people get mad, they don't have any energy left to hide who they really are. So you're pretty much going to see the unfiltered version of what behavior, what preference is natural to them. Those who talk with their hands and face are going to be extroverted. If they talk with their face but not their hands, they're generally more so a commander. If they talk with their hands and their face, they're generally more so an entertainer. If they talk with neither at all, they're probably an organizer. If they don't talk with their hands, but they make minimal facial expressions, most of which are soft and kind and all, that's probably a relator. And watch what they do under stress and match it to the behaviors on the backside of your core snapshot. So after knowing all of this, what would be your goal? How would you take this information and make difficult people disappear? Take the sheets with you. Kind of like I said back, excuse me, sir, would you fill this out before we even talk? Let's broaden this a bit, because I think this will be a great note upon which to end. Do any of you have any goals, just in general? You got goals. Can you conjure up, think about, create in your mind the visual of some goal that you are really excited about? Like now. Can you come up with a goal in your head? Everybody come up with some goal in your head that you are really excited about. Really excited, yeah? Because in a moment I'm going to ask you to share that goal with your neighbor. I'm just going to change it up a little bit. And based on some reactions I've just heard, perhaps I need now to give you a chance to think of a new goal. I'll let y'all figure that out. I don't know where the reaction came from. Think of a goal that you're really, really excited about, totally excited about. Everybody got it? You got it in your head? Got the goal? Carl, you got a goal in your head? All right, you got a goal? All right, we got a goal. Now, I'd like for you to turn to your neighbor, and I'd like for you to tell him or her this goal, but I want you to do one thing that's very important. I want you to act as if, in the telling of the goal, that you're extremely angry. Whatever you got to do, facial expressions, head, whatever you got to do. Tell them this goal, but act like you are ticked off. Ready? Go. All right, hold on just a minute. Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm a little confused because I was pretty sure the assignment was to act like you are mad. Yet all I am hearing is a room full of laughter. Was this hard to do? Why? Number one, we're not mad. Okay, I got that. Why else was this hard? Excellent, because she said cancel first. Good job. Why else was this hard? Was it hard to fake being mad? Why? I love it because it wasn't real, because it's opposite. Your goals are positive, yes? So many of you gave it a good old college try. I mean, you looked at your neighbor, you're like, or whatever you had to do. But it was real obvious to your neighbor because, and this is why it was funny, because your neighbor's looking at you going, you lie. Well, that's also, number one, I set it up that way, and number two, your neighbor was paying attention. And it's real difficult for you to act like you're angry when what's in your head is really positive, right? Don't you think the same thing works in the reverse? If you leave here today with the prevalent attitude that people out there are difficult, and you have an attitude about the fact that they're so difficult to deal with and so different than me, and it just frustrates me, and it's difficult for me to handle, and I don't like that person, I don't like talking to them, they never listen. You continue to say those sorts of things. It's real difficult for you to then have any sort of energy around changing that. It's real difficult for you to act positive when what's in your head is all negative. And after today, you have an opportunity right here in this moment to not only make difficult people disappear, but to make some of the difficult voices in your head disappear, and to make a real significant difference in your relationships. Thank you for letting me spend the afternoon with you, and I will turn it back to Richard. Yay, Richard!